Good afternoon, everybody, and today we're going to be talking about sexual reproduction. And to really understand sexual reproduction, we should probably know the difference between asexual and sexual. So it's very clear for some organisms that they reproduce asexually. So this is a bacteria, and this is what we call binary fission, where one bacterium turns into two. And remember, bacteria has a circular piece of DNA, so we don't call it mitosis because we're not separating chromosomes like we do in other cells. So bacteria simply just replicate this loop, and one loop goes into each. No nucleus, nothing like that. So that's binary fission. That's definitely asexual, and we don't often think of multicellular organisms doing asexual reproduction, but they do. And so this is a spider plant, and it's sending down what we call a stolon, which is pretty much just a stem. And it's hoping that it'll reach ground at some point and grow down some roots and grow a new plant. But in both cases, the offspring are genetically identical to the parent. Okay. Now, in sexual reproduction, though, the offspring are not genetically identical. There's some sort of mix between the two parents. And so, any kind of mammal or animal is going to exhibit sexual reproduction. Plants also do sexual reproduction. So the flower is its sexual organ, and inside there's an egg, and the sperm or the pollen could be also within that flower, or sometimes there's male and female flowers. So that's for plants. Now there's some kind of gray area here. This is bacteria as well. This is two bacterium, and in between them is a little tube called a sex pilus, and between that tube they can actually exchange genetic information. So this is how bacterial drug resistance comes about. One bacterium will get a mutation which will give it resistance towards a cleaner or an antibiotic. And now that it has that gene that makes it stronger, it's going to pass those genes on to neighboring bacterium. So this can become really dangerous in hospitals. This right here is another sex pilus, but these are two eukaryotic cells, so these are probably something like an amoeba or some other type of protist. So, even bacteria can do some sort of form of sexual reproduction here. Okay, now since we are talking about sexual reproduction, we have to know how sperm and egg, the sex cells, are made. And this is through meiosis. And so since we've already gone through mitosis, a lot of this is very similar. Okay, before we get into meiosis, let's take a look at this family. Might look a little familiar. There's our friend Miley Cyrus, and these are all her siblings. And this is dad, and I believe this is mom. And so you can see that all the siblings have some resemblance to each other. Some look more like the dad, some look more like the mom. But the siblings don't look identical to each other, even though they've come from the same two parents. And so when siblings are formed, there's got to be some reshuffling of genes. And not everybody receives equal amounts of paternal and maternal DNA. So a lot of variation is created in sexual reproduction, and that's the whole point of it, is variation. So why go through the trouble of trying to meet a mate and making a match there and going through all that if it didn't have some sort of evolutionary significance? And it turns out it does. Making identical offspring wouldn't be very beneficial because they're not all going to be famous like Miley. You may as well have a whole bunch and hope you hit it big. But in nature, it just means that if there's a natural disaster, or food runs out, or a disease comes through, somebody's going to survive. So sexual reproduction is very beneficial. It's not as fast though, but at least you guys won't, the whole family won't be knocked out by some disease. Okay, so let's figure out how this happens. So how is it that siblings look similar but different? Okay, now to understand this, you got to know that there's two main cell types of the body. So this is where your notes that I handed out start. And so there's somatic cells. These are just the regular cells in our body. And these are created through mitosis. And they're all genetically identical. They don't all do the same job, but they have the same DNA in their nucleus. Reproductive cells, though, these are also known as gametes. Okay, so gametes are things like sperm, egg, pollen, and they are created through a process of meiosis, and they only carry half of the DNA. Okay, so half the number of chromosomes. And so to get half the number of chromosomes, we have to go through meiosis. All right, I'm going to skip over. Your next picture, oops, sorry about this. There we go. So let's talk more about gametes here. So male gametes, when they're formed, it's called spermatogenesis. And for human beings, spermatogenesis is going to happen in males from reproductive age all the way through death. So there is no ticking clock for males. They'll always produce these. And you see that all 4 sperm that were made from the original germline cell are viable. So one cell in the testes is going to split in 2. That's going to split again to create our 4 sperm. Okay? So all 4 of these sperm are good to go. Now for a female, though, it's called oogenesis, and it happens from, well, females are kind of funny. So the female has her eggs by the time she's born. So we'll go more into it, but females, they do not do meiosis all the time. They just do most of it in infancy. All right, now 4 cells are created, but not all 4 turn into the egg. So this is going to be the egg or the ovum. Okay, so this is the egg that gets ovulated every month for a reproductive age woman. The other 3 cells are going to turn into polar bodies. These are going to donate organelles and make this egg strong. And so every month, although 4 cells are made, only 1 is really going to get, knocked out of the park. All right, so let's take a good look at our life cycle here. So a woman's going to do meiosis, and here's the thing. She's going to do half of meiosis. She's going to do half of the process by the time she's born, okay? So during fetal development. All right, and each month until she reaches 50-ish, when she goes through menopause, she'll ovulate, and which means she'll finish meiosis and ovulate 1 egg per month. And like we said, meiosis in the testes is going to happen all throughout his life. Okay, so egg's going to be produced, sperm's going to be produced. If these 2 meet at the exact right time, you're going to get fertilization, okay? And so I want you guys to notice these numbers. So these individuals each have 46 chromosomes, right? Okay, 23 from her mom, 23 from her dad. He's going to have 46 as well. 23 from his mom, 23 from his dad. So he has 2, they both have 2 sets of chromosomes. Whereas when they make sperm and egg, that number gets cut in half. Every sperm only has 23 chromosomes. Okay, so 23, or the N number, is referred to as the haploid number. Okay, so you would say for human beings, the haploid number is 23. For a grown adult, all the normal somatic cells are going to be what we call diploid. Okay, diploid means they have 2 sets of chromosomes, or 46.
Good morning, please join us for morning prayer in the chapel beginning at 9:15.
Okay.
All students, faculty, and staff are welcome. Thank you.
Sorry for that. Okay, so these 23 chromosomes, these 23 are going to come together during fertilization, and then the zygote goes back to being diploid. So we're going to have 46 here again. And so the zygote is just the very first cell. Mitosis is going to happen, and before we get a juvenile, we're going to get an embryo, and then that's going to turn into a fetus, and then eventually a baby and a juvenile, okay? But all the while, mitosis is going to aid in the development from zygote all the way through adulthood, okay? All right, now you guys have, oops, where it is, this picture right here. So this shows a picture of those 46 chromosomes that we were talking about. So 23 pairs. And notice that the last pair is our sex-determining chromosomes. Okay, so this would be what we call a karyotype. This picture is called a karyotype. This is a karyotype of a male because there's a Y chromosome. If it was a female, this would be a long X chromosome. All right. Now, notice that each chromosome here, like look at this first pair, it's the same length. One came from the mother, one came from the father, okay? So if this was my karyotype, this would be the chromosome that I received from my mother. This would be the one that I received from my father. Now, my father's chromosome and my mother's chromosome are going to contain different things. Like my dad looks different than my mom, but these are the same genes. So that might code for eye color. And this over here also codes for eye color. So these are what we call homologous. They're the same length and contain the same types of genes. They're not identical, but they're going to code for the same parts of our body. All right, now this is what it would look like in G1. This is what cells look like in G1. Now, as soon as you go through the S phase, then these are going to get copied. So the centromere holds together the two identical copies. So sister chromatids are identical, okay? And this is going to become very important in the next portion. All right, so we're going to stop right there, and I'd like you guys to make sure your notes look good about this. We're going to go through the next side in class tomorrow, and I would definitely start reading your chapter about this as well. Okay, see you guys in class.